Bill Maher just launched his 24th season, a rare run in television, and a reminder that he's been part of the political conversation long enough to see the cycles, the extremes, and the hypocrisies repeat themselves. Joe recently sat down with the comedian and talked about wokeness, independence, late-night television, and why engaging with Donald Trump, even when it's uncomfortable, still matters.
So when we were growing up, most comedians were left-wing. You had that sort of reputation of being left-wing.
Still
reputation left. But maybe in 17, 18, you started speaking out against wokeness and everything else.
Things changed.
Things changed.
Wokeness came along.
Yeah, I'm just curious because when you did it, it was different, right? Nobody had done that before. But I'm curious what your attitude is about these comedians who decided at some point, I'm going to be anti-woke, I'm going to speak, I'm going to go further right. And they seem to be a bit clumsy at times.
Well, I think the difference is that I'm actually a political comedian. Some of these people are just sort of trolling, or I don't think they really follow politics that closely. I mean, I was steeped in politics as a kid. My father was a newsman. It was just in my house. I mean, the New York Times was on the breakfast table every day. I didn't have to ask, are the Iranian Shiites or Sunnis, and what are Shiites and Sunnis?
Right.
I think some of these people come to politics a little late. They're not really political comedians, but they're thrust in places where you got to do a monologue every night, or you got to, be political. It's so ironic when you first knew me and I was on Politically Incorrect and I started that show, and everybody said you can't do a show where the host has political opinions. You'll alienate half the crowd. Johnny Carson never did it. Letterman never did it. Leno didn't do it. They were down the middle. And I wasn't. I'd tell you my opinion on everything. Every question ended with, do you have a problem? Does anybody have a problem with that? And then it completely reversed, where you had to be political. And of course, all the late night shows just speak to one half the country.
I mean, they're still left.
Right.
Yeah.
And
why is that?
Good question. A lot of books could be written about the answer. I think that's who they must feel is watching television.
Incredible line I heard from Johnny Carson, where Carson got what you get, what so many people don't get. See, Carson always said the secret is in the central time zone. If you're in the central time zone, the coasts take care of themselves.
I mean, I wouldn't pander to them. I wouldn't say anything purposely to get them. I just am going to speak honestly about everything I think, and I'm going to resonate with people in all parts of the country with all political persuasions, because it's so funny. I read the polls. It says 27% of people now identify as Republican, 27% as Democrat, which is not a lot for either. 45% as independent. Now, the next question off everybody's lips should be, then why don't independents win? They're killing it. Well, because they all get shooed into one box or the other. But obviously, there's a lot of people who don't like the extremes. And I don't like the extremes, unless the extreme is what makes sense. Sometimes it is.
Talking about Carson and everybody, who were your influences? When did you decide?
Yeah, Carson.
Was Carson the
big
one?
My biggest hero, yes. I mean, because he was on every night. It was on late. I had to sneak to watch it.
By the way, I try to explain this to my kids. You got Carson every night. And even as a little kid, I remember looking at it going, I can't believe we get to see this guy every night.
Yeah.
It was magic.
Every night, and he was just, I was 12 years old or whatever when I started watching, and besides being funny, he was just what you, as a boy, turning into a man at that age, James Bond, Johnny Carson, you had to have some people who you thought, oh, as I'm becoming a man, this is the kind of man I want to be. Looked like girls liked him. He was sophisticated. there was a kind of a mischievous quality about him. He was gracious, but you could tell that behind that, he was no pushover. and he knew how to have fun.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I just loved him in every way. And then there was, like, when I started to get into doing stand-up is a different animal. Then it was George Carlin and Robert Klein.
Right.
Because that's a different thing than doing a monologue.
Can I ask you about making that step? The first time you decided to step up on stage, I heard Nate Bargatze and you talking about it's so unique. And I've got to say, I talk 4 hours a day. It seems scary as though. You're naked in front of an audience. Talk about the first time. Like, how hard was that to take that step onto stage? Or did you just, did it come natural?
It's brutal. I mean, when I hear people talk about depression, I had depression my first 2 years out of college when I lived in New York and was trying to be a comedian. Now, people get depression sometimes because there's a chemical imbalance in their head. My depression honestly came by. My life just sucked. I had nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. No women, no money, no comfort. I didn't even have the money to eat the food I wanted. And every time I tried to learn my craft, I was not only met by indifference, but sometimes scorn. They're laughing at you. You're going on stage, if you get on, at 2 in the morning in front of a couple of drunks. Yes. I mean, it is just brutal. It doesn't make you want to do it the next night.
How did you keep doing it?
Because
what pushed you up there?
Just fumes. Yeah. You know, I mean, the occasional line of encouragement from one of the older comedians who would say they thought you were funny, that meant the world. But that's about all I had to go on, was just, I want to get this. I don't want to lose in life. Well, this is what I have picked, and I got to make it work. And so I'm going to, as much as tonight was so discouraging, I'm going to go home tomorrow, and I'm going to start again, and I'm going to write new jokes.
And what was the moment where you said, I may be able to do this?
That was June 20th, 1980. That was the first night I went on stage for like 20 minutes in front of a hot crowd, and for full 20 minutes they were laughing. And I thought, oh, I just did a set at a comedy club and got laughs.
And you remember the day?
I do.
June 20th night. That is so awesome.
Yeah, because it was like passing the baccalaureate if I was trying to be a scientist in France, you know. I just was, that was the day. If you can do 20 minutes in a comedy club, you can make a living forever. It doesn't guarantee a career, but it just shows, well, you got on the raft. You're not just flailing in the sea anymore.
You've been doing this for a long time. You've been following politics your whole life. Your dad was a newsman. Are you discouraged where we are as a country, or do you think this is America? It's rough and tumble. It's 3 yards and a pile of dust. We'll get there.
No, it's very discouraging and scary. You know, people, we have something in common, Joe, which is that we talk to the president. And so for some people, we're evil. And we're not evil. Yeah. In fact, we're, I think, doing something smarter than most people, because he is the president of the United States. And as I keep trying to make the case, you know, what is the alternative? And the people who say, well, you're elevating him. Oh, my God, you mean he's going to become president? I mean, how he's already there.
How do you elevate him? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he does talk to people. Yeah. But, I mean, one reason why I got invited to the White House, I think it was kind of a Nixon to China thing. Like, I had established my credentials, I think, rather well, as someone who was a critique, and that never stopped after the dinner.
No, it didn't. But what did you make, though, of people judging you as harshly as they judged you?
They're not bright. They're just emotional.
Not. It's stupid.
It's pure emotionalism. No. I get it that Trump drives people crazy, and for good reason. I said when he was running the second time, I said, I'm not going to judge anything before he gets there, but having been there now for a year, I judge. Right. And a lot of things I judge terribly. I just think he's done a lot of things I absolutely hate, like Doge was horrible, and the new Pentagon budget is 1.5 $5 trillion when they said they were going to cut it, and trying to put people in jail, and always talking about you're going to get the death penalty and treason and everything with ICE. And I mean, I could go on with the list. There's also a shorter list of things that aren't terrible, that I don't hate, that I'm glad he did. I'm glad he bombed Iran. The peace deal in the Middle East, getting the hostages out. There are some things, okay? And as far as talking to him, what I found and what people found so abhorrent that I would report accurately is that you can talk to him, and that he's very different.
He's a very charming guy in person.
Well, he listens.
Yeah.
It's not at all what. And now you can ask the question, why doesn't he do that when he's in public? I can't answer these questions. All I can tell you is that my assessment of him is that he's not the worst guy in the world, except when he's in a fight. Unfortunately, politics is all fighting. When he gets into a fight, then he's like a guy in a bar. He picks up whatever he has to kill you with it, and he just doesn't stop. And that's. But as far as my experience with him, and what I would say to people who criticize this is, he needs more people like you and me talking to him,
right,
not less, because he's not a guy with a lot of, let's say, fixed beliefs. You know, a few things, tariffs are great, that he's had forever.
Right.
But, I mean, you can talk to him. Some of it might get in, as opposed to not talking to him, where I guarantee nothing will get in. And he is a guy who actually likes discussion. I think he's actually bored with the ass-kissers around him. So for the people who say, oh, he's got nothing but ass-kissers around him, okay.
Right.
Then you get somebody who's not, you know, I mean, every time I said something that he did not agree with or was confrontational, he never got mad.
Right.
You know, he liked a conversation. And so I would just encourage lots of people, try to get in there.
Right.
Because you'll enjoy it.
You can also find Joe's appearance on the latest episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, streaming now on HBO Max.